All right. We probably should get started. All right, because I know a lot of you do have a couple other workshops today. There is also the C1 low mid. There's also C2D, C2 debate, which is after this. Very quick. Uh, my name is Ray. I'm at Songpa branch. I'll be doing C2 low mid as well as the C2 debate later today. C2 debate, remember, is 1 to 2 p.m. You should have enough time to get to work after you attend that meeting. Um, Basically, today is a overview of the C2 low and C2 mid programs. They're essentially the same thing with just a few very minor changes between the low and mid levels. So very quick, first, we have the low levels. So low levels with C2 are considered EC4. All right, so low level is EC4, mega, and giga, identified as the orange. And then mid levels for C2 in the green are Terra, Bridge, Par, and Birdie. Um, Other than the distinction between low and mid, there really isn't too much of a difference. For today, we will go through this using the mid levels, but let me point out very quick the differences between C2 low and C2 mid. So if we take a look at C2 low, we'll use mega. The one thing you'll notice here is one unit encapsulates basically three different lessons. And so each of these three lessons are part of a unit. And essentially, this first unit is technology, right? And so then you'll clearly see, right, unit 2 is more about art, unit 3 is about their behavior, and unit 4 is more about like society. This with C2 low, each week is a new topic. So very similar to C1. And one thing you need to make sure is you always start from the top, right? You do not skip lessons, right? So you just go straight down the list when you're doing the class. Again, it sounds self-explanatory, but there are always mistakes that people make, right? But then with C2 mid, all right, you'll notice that if you haven't taken a look already, you do the same unit twice or the same topic twice. All right, so one unit is now the same topic 2 different weeks. And so the first week is a much more in-depth idea of that topic. The second week is more of like a review plus a big project of that topic. And so this, again, this can be good or bad. It depends on how your students kind of receive the topic. But here you do have much more chances to get in depth and get the students' own ideas regarding a certain topic. So the whole goal of C2, all right, as you know, C2 is usually a day 2 class for most locations. So the overall goal of C2 is actually to really build the students' own viewpoints, right? Getting them to think about different perspectives, essentially. In C2, low mid, usually there's two perspectives, right, about a certain topic. And we're trying to get students to be able to understand both viewpoints because as they level up and they move on to the higher levels, they're going to start needing to be able to understand more than one viewpoint or perspective, essentially. C2D, C2 debates, which we'll go over in about 2 hours, that actually usually has at least 3 different viewpoints that could be used. And so all the Cheongdam levels and classes, you know, they build up, right? They build up on each other. So here we're introducing students to 2 viewpoints, and then later on they'll learn multiple other viewpoints in the sense. The other goals with C2, especially low mid, is we're trying to like increase or strengthen, right, their problem solving and creativity, right? And so this is really through the projects, right? Projects are a really, really big part of C2, low and mid. It really lets the students showcase not only what they've learned based on the topic from this week, but they've also increasing their own creativity, working together in teams or individually, depending on the projects, right? Problem solving, if you give them a problem to solve based on the topic, can they actually use the knowledge that they've learned in this class and combine it with their own personal knowledge to create a project output? And then there is also the idea of just enhancing general background knowledge, right? A lot of these topics are topics that they will have heard about. So they might not know the name in English, but when you explain it to them, they'll be like, ah, I know what this is in Korean, right? So Tiger Moms is a big one that many students will know. Many students know VR, they know brands, they know drones, they know like makeup and plastic surgery. And so really we're trying to help the students gain some of that, more of that background knowledge so that they're better prepared for, again, future levels, right? The more background knowledge and ideas that they have, the better or the higher chances of them succeeding in the future, especially future classes. So for today, I am going to run through this using Birdie. But again, there are very, very few differences compared to all the levels. I'll point out a couple when we get there. So the first part, right, the beginning, very similar to, I guess, well, first I should ask, have you guys trained or participated in any C1 like in-house preparations yet? Because I know the C1 Zoom training is right after this. But if you have done, right, if you have done any C1 preparations at your location already, you will have heard about the title page, right? And so the title page is really the first place to get students kind of interested in the topic. It's really, you can ask a student, all right, what is our topic for today? And then you use the pictures to kind of gauge some interest. So many people will like to use the bottom picture or the middle picture, right? Like, how does this student feel, right? And then you can kind of get students interested in talking about like, okay, when do you feel like this, right? How does this student feel when she holds her face like this, right? When do you feel like this? Why do you feel like this? Getting students kind of talking about the topic, getting them interested first, and then you can move on to the Topic Connect page. And so the Topic Connect page is really about, again, getting some interest. You can use pictures, you can use videos to also supplement. There is a word map here. And so the word map or infographic, it's basically got a lot of those keywords or key ideas that the students will need to, well, they will see in the lesson itself. And so as you're preparing for this class, one thing you should keep in mind is which key points do you want to focus on? Which key ideas do you think are most important for students to know? And then you can focus on that a little bit more in the word map. You're not going to have time to go over all of these. So again, you want to just pick your focus. So in this case, it's Tiger Moms. I would probably focus on a more authoritarian style where it's, mom wants you to always get good grades. You have to study. And then again, you can discuss with the students, right? Who has a tiger mom? Or, how would you feel if your mom was a tiger mom? And so it's, again, getting some interest in the students and getting some of their ideas so that even if they don't understand the exact phrase Tiger Mom in this case. You want them to at least understand the concept of it so that they are better suited for the future part of the lesson. Again, media cards are always good, so you can always incorporate pictures or videos of the specific topic. Just one thing you need to make sure for videos is you have to watch the whole video so you know what the content is and that there is no, inappropriate content or that it's age appropriate for your students. Because even though the title might look good, there's always, hidden curse words that they sneak in there, or there might be some inappropriate imagery that might not be suitable for especially, third or fourth graders compared to middle schoolers. So make sure you're just careful with always the media cards that you use. And so that's the general idea of the Topic Connect page. Your goal with Topic Connect, you want to spend around, I would say, you want to keep this under 15 minutes. All right. Under 15 minutes. If you spend too long on this, you're going to end up running out of time for the project sections. So under 15 minutes is probably what I would say is the best timing for this. Okay. I'll probably we'll do general questions at the end, but any questions about Topic Connect? Anything you want to know? Maybe you want an example of how to do it? Anything like that? You can ask in voice, you can ask in chat, doesn't matter. I can see both. No? All right, again, example, okay. So we can do an example. I don't know how many of you are willing to turn on your mics right now, but no, hopefully if you get called on, you answer. So let's do this. All right, so let's go here. So today we have our Unit 1, Lesson 1, and let's go here. Let's go maybe L. L, what is our topic for today?
Tiger moms.
Tiger moms, right? And so first, right, we just talked about tiger moms, right? Tiger moms are what? And then someone would say, a very mean mom or something. And so here we can say, let's look at this video, right? Let's look at this video of a tiger mom, right? Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. So let's look at this video, right? And this video is about, if you've seen Fresh Off of the Boat, this mother is like, wow, you got only A's, right? Or you got straight A's. This school is too easy. Make school harder for my kid, right? And so, right? And then maybe I'll ask like, oh, Trevor, right? Is your mom similar to the mom in the video?
No, not really.
Okay, how is your mom different then?
Because she's not very strict with how I am. She's usually pretty laid back on my schoolwork.
Okay, right. And so then, right, maybe we'll go next to like, someone else, right? And it'll be like, oh, how about you, right? Do you have the same parents, or are your parents similar or different to Trevor, right? And then you want to also make sure to include some kind of like, interconnectedness with the students, right? You don't want to just jump from, okay, Trevor answered, okay, next student, right? But try to connect them a little bit as much as you can, right? Compare parents to each other, right? Maybe ask like, oh, Sam, right? Would you want parents like Trevor's, or would you want a tiger parent? Things like that. And so you can kind of connect the students together a little bit in this Topic Connect. Okay. Again, I know it's not exactly a mock in itself, but it's more just example. Okay. So anything else about Topic Connect? No? All right, then we'll go next. The next page for this is what they call Consider. And so Consider page is only for Par and Birdie. So if we go to like Bridge, right? Bridge doesn't actually have why is it not C1? Sorry. Bridge does not actually have, I believe, a consider page, yeah. So Par Birdie has an extra page called consider, and it's basically just showing the students the two different perspectives that they will see. And so here we have our two groups, right? Tiger parenting is good, tiger parenting is bad. And so here on your tablet, you can have students basically circle the answer, and then you can use the screen capture to show like everyone's answer on the screen. One thing you want to do when you do this is you want to make sure students can explain why they pick a side, right? And so again, if this was an example, it would be like, you don't have to actually answer. You don't actually have to answer, by the way, but it'd be like, Andrea, right? Why do you think tiger parenting is beneficial for children? And then Andrea would give her reason, right? And then again, you can introduce that a little bit of like connectivity within students, right? You can be like, Michaela, like, why do you disagree with Andrea, right? Just a little bit of connection between the students. So that's really about this. Again, you want to elicit personalized responses from the students. Why does that specific student think a specific answer? This page is a very good page to get students who usually don't like volunteering to talk, because everyone has to answer this, right? You cannot just, all students have to have an idea. So if you have students who don't like to answer questions, don't like to volunteer, this is a good place to cold call them. And then depending on your location will want you to divide into groups for the projects now or later. So this one, I'll give you the very general overview, but you have to ask your location, ask your HI or FM, or maybe you have a module-based TL. Ask them how they want your location to specifically do this. The general method of this is you cover the group project, right? Every C2 class concludes with a project. And so here they're saying we're going to divide into groups right now so that you know your groups and that you can basically have groups ready and have students work together possibly in their groups for the whole class. But again, this whole part really depends on your location. So you got to ask your boss, basically. Okay. So again, this is only Par and Birdie. Only Par and Birdie has this consider page. EC4 to Bridge do not have it. Okay. Also, if you see me looking on this side, it's because all your faces are on this side. And then the screen is over here. Okay, then we'll go next. All right, we'll go next to identify. So identify is essentially research. And so again, just like the group project part on the bottom here, just like this, you have to ask your specific location, do you do this page? Because for Songpa, for us, we skip this, right? We believe it's more important to have students focus on the actual reading and listening itself and the project rather than researching. But if your location does participate and do this research page, they will probably have more specific instructions. The general idea of this research page is you're going to work together, right? And use keywords to search for articles about the topic. Another thing that is actually pretty important could be to have as the instructor. The instructor should basically pre-prepare a few articles that are appropriate so that the students, if they don't have, or if they have a lot of difficulty researching or finding a top article about this topic, the instructor can provide it to them. And so the whole idea is before doing the reading and listening section, students are trying to kind of get an idea of this topic. All right, and then they discuss it. But again, this is all about your specific location. Does your location actually do this part or not? So you will have to ask your HI or FM or whoever. Okay. Let's go into the actual bulk of the class. And so there are usually two perspectives, right? And they're usually broken down as understand and contrast. So one is reading, one is listening. And so it doesn't really matter which one is first. They're just always two different ones. So in this case, understand, perspective A, right? As you can see here, it's the first perspective. Understand is the reading section. And so what you are not doing on this reading passage is you are not doing Cheongdam pizza. You're not doing skim, which you'll go over again in next hour for most likely. But if this is the first time you're hearing of it, it's okay. You'll hear about it more in about an hour. All right, but you are not doing that Cheongdam pizza concept entirely. Okay. This is more about identifying the actual answers. And so one thing here that you need to understand is this first part. This first part is our thesis. And then here we have our main ideas. So we have main ideas here and here. So we are looking for some details. And so probably the biggest thing on this page is students need to understand WH questions. So one thing that you, as the instructor, you have to elicit from the students is, well, okay, our first main idea is encourages learning, right? Which WH question can we ask to get more information about encourages learning? And so there might be a student that says, what does encourage mean? And that's where you need to also be prepared with maybe a media card, right? Trying to showcase what is encourage or what is academically. And so you really have to elicit these WH questions. So usually lesson 1, lesson 2, it's WH question bootcamp, right? You just list them out, right? Who, what, where, when, why, how, and I make them write it down. All right, I make them write down. What is the answer? Right? What is the answer for any who question? So one of you can tell me, right? What is the answer for any who question?
A person.
Person, usually like a person, or it could be a group, like a company, right? But a person or a group, right? And then the answer for any what question, usually it's a thing, right? Place, when, time, why, reason, how, explain, right? How is usually the hardest one for students to understand. So I usually tell them, like, I usually give an example, like, how do you make kimbap? Right? And then they'll explain it to me, right? First, you have the seaweed. Second, you have the rice. Third, you have, all the fillings, and then you roll it and cut it. So they're explaining how you do it, right? But you really, Har and Birdie should know this, but lower levels, they're going to struggle. So really, really drilling the answers, right, of the WH questions will kind of help them understand, right, a little bit better, especially when they have to make the WH questions themselves. So as the instructor, you need to know what WH questions are the actual correct ones. And so one way you can do that is, right, by checking the answer, right? It says, right, encourages learning. Well, a tough study regimen helps children master what they learn. So how does it encourage learning? Well, they can master what they learn. So it's explaining how they learn more. And so you do, as the instructor, you do need to know what the answer is, what the WH question is. So the process of this, after you get the WH questions, you want to have students actually identify the paragraphs as well. So you can use the main idea, encourages learning, and tell students, all right, where do we see encourages learning? And someone will say, paragraph 2. And then it's always good to label paragraphs, right? Students get confused otherwise. We have paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 here. And then early on in the term, it could be good to have students work together in groups because they're trying to, they're getting used to the structure again. They just finished V1. So maybe have them work in groups together for the first time. And then you do want to transition into, of course, doing it individually. The SEG guide, if you have it, the SEG guide mentions that they have the workbook and they can annotate in the workbook, but the reading passage is not in the workbook. It's only on the tab. So what I encourage students to do is I do encourage students to actually write out the whole map into their workbook, because it also does help them with their iLearning later. Their iLearning is, of course, about this. So writing out their answers is highly encouraged in their workbook. I usually have them underline on the tab first, and then as we discuss the correct answers, they can write the correct answers in their workbook. All right, so they don't have to keep erasing or whatever. So you basically just say, all right, once we have our WH questions, let's say here, this is how, right? How does tiger parenting encourage learning, right? And then I'll say, okay, there are 2 answers for this question. And then let's see, how does tiger parenting make students perform better academically? All right, and then again, we have 2 answers. We'll be like, okay, give them some time. They're gonna need some time to read through. They're gonna need some time to answer the questions, find the sentence that answers the question. Depending on your location will focus on one of 2 things. Your location will either focus on the textbook answer and explaining what that textbook answer is, or some locations actually do focus on, if you do not get the textbook answer, right? Maybe your answer is not 100% the textbook answer, as long as the student can explain why they picked the answer and it relates to, right, maybe that WH question, or they show some degree of thinking and they can kind of analyze that text and say here's why I picked this sentence, right? Because again, we're trying to build their own perspectives and how they understand each idea. So again, depending on your location, you'll focus on strictly textbook answer or more creative thinking and explaining and justifying your answer. And then after you get the answers, you can do some discussion about this topic. And so this is where, again, having some media, having some videos that students can talk about can be very useful. The goal here is you want to spend ideally about 40 minutes on this page, right? So 40 minutes, that includes everything, right? Discussing the perspective, which is, in this case, benefits, right? Discussing the main ideas, eliciting WH questions, finding the questions, justifying the answers, and discussion. So it sounds like 40 minutes is a lot, but there's a lot of things you have to do in that 40 minutes. So actually, a lot of times you actually end up realizing that you end up running out of time because the discussions about certain topics go much longer than you want, which is not a bad thing. Discussion is always good, especially when students are really into the topic. Okay. There are also a couple of discussion questions embedded into the SMART textbook. So you can also use those to kind of start the discussion. Okay. So the difference between Par Birdie and all the other levels is EC4 to Bridge. I'll just use Bridge. They actually give you the WH questions. They tell you the WH questions. So EC4, Mega, Giga, Tera, Bridge, they tell you the WH questions. Because they are a little lower level, right? They do need that little bit of help. But just like Par Birdie, you want to make sure students understand, right? What are they looking for? So it'll be like, okay, right? Let's just go here. Will, right? Our first question, where are fantasy novels sold? Well, Will, remember, what is the answer for any where question? And then Will say,
it's a place.
it's a place, right? And so now, right, students know, right, they're going to look for a place to answer this question, right? And so you want to make sure students understand the answer for these WH questions, okay? Again, EC4 to Bridge, they give you the question, right? In this case, the first one is a listening, right? There's no reading here. So you just, yeah, we'll go over listening later, right after. But for now, any questions about the reading perspective part? Any procedural questions or process questions? Any idea, any concerns about how to run through the reading page?
All right, got a question.
Yeah, Antonio.
So just in terms of sequence,
Mhm.
are we putting, like, let's say here's the map, we've identified, this is the main idea, and then we've put in our like WH questions to guide them. Are we now giving them independent time to go through the passage?
Yeah. So after you go through these WH questions, then depending on how you're running it that day, again, maybe early in the term, you can do groups, later in the term, more individual. Then you're going to give them that time to actually answer the questions. All right. So in this case, there are 4 answers that the students will need. Maybe I'll go like 6 minutes, right? 3 minutes for each paragraph, right? You want to make sure that you do have enough time to look through the paragraph and try to find the sentences or sentence that answers that WH question. And then, of course, you will have students who pick, wrong answers. You can guide them, like, as you're proctoring, right? You can point out to them, like, right? You underline the place, but our question is how, right? What is the answer for a how question, remember? And so kind of guide them and give them hints as you're proctoring, walking around the class. But you do want to make sure they do have individual time to work on this as well. Again, also early in the term, it could be beneficial to do one together. So maybe this is week 1. So maybe we'll do the paragraph 2 answers together as a class, and then the paragraph 3 answers individually or in your, like, next to your partner, if you have like, 2s and 2s or something. So again, I guess it's just you use your judgment, right? Early in the term, they'll need more help, right? So it'll be better to do more group work or as a class. Later on the term, they should be better at this. They can do it more individually. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Nothing else? Nothing else for reading? All right, then we'll go to the listening section. Oh, and just in case, it stands to say there is a reading passage here. Do not press the audio. There's always that mistake. Somebody makes that mistake every time, and it ruins your CCTV score. All right. So if it's a reading passage, it's very clearly a reading passage. Don't even touch the audio. All right. So for the listening, then, right, for the listening, again, listening will be perspective or the other perspective in this case. A lot of the same procedures, right? So same thing before, we have the thesis, right? So here's what the listening thesis will be about, right? We have the two main ideas for the listening, and then it's the same thing. You're gonna try to elicit those WH questions for the listening answers. Now, the difference for the listening is, you guys have all done A2, I'm assuming, right? A2 listening, note-taking, right? ASK, keywords, symbols, abbreviation, right? Getting all your topic and key details. That doesn't matter in C2. That does not matter for listening in C2, okay? Listening in C2 is play the audio. Can the students listen for the answer to the WH question? That's it. All right. And so, again, as you're prepping this, right, I don't have the tab with me, but so I can't really show you, but on the bottom of the tab, when it plays the audio, you know how there's like the circle thingy and then the giant bar, you can put bookmarks on the audio. And so as you're prepping, it could be smart or helpful for you and your students if you bookmark where the answers are. So, and maybe as you're justifying, or maybe if students are confused, you know exactly where each answer is. But other than that, right, students are really just taking notes and listening for the answer, or what they think is the answer. And again, it is okay if students' answers are a little different from the smart textbook answers, again, as long as they can try to justify, as long as they can explain why they think their answer connects to that topic itself. All right, so an example of this would be like, all right, well, here's the answers. Well, so we have a burdensome approach to learning. How is Tiger parenting burdensome? Right, and then then as you listen,
more than 12 hours a day studying? That might sound like a nightmare to many students in Western countries.
right, and as the students listen, right, they're just listening for that answer to the question, and they're going to write it down. They can write it down in their workbook. They can type it. Most students will choose writing it in their workbook because they write faster than they type. But as long as they write it down somewhere, it should be fine, right? You just need to make sure students are actively participating still during the listening. They're writing it down on their workbook or in their tab, right? Do not have students be lazy, right? And rely on the other students to give them the answer. Okay. So, any questions, right? After you go over the listening, it's basically the same thing. Thesis, main idea, WH questions. You play the audio. Students will give you the answers and then explain the answers, and then you just discuss again. So essentially, reading and listening follow the same format. It's just, do they read for the answer or do they listen for the answer? So again, I would say listening is usually a little shorter because students take longer to read. So your goal, probably about 35 to 40 minutes. That's a realistic goal, about 35, 40 minutes on this page. Just so because again, listening is shorter than reading. Okay. Any questions on C2 low mid listening? Nothing?
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry.
Oh yeah, Queenie, question?
Yes, with the listening, like, do you normally like stop, pause in the middle, or like just for them to catch the answer? You know, like the lower level student, they struggle to just like write everything at once.
Yeah.
So a lot of time, do you like really pause or like play over and over again until they catch the answer if time allows?
So definitely it depends on the level of your students, right? If your students are, maybe you do have, right, EC4 or Mega, Giga, the lower students. Of course, the audio is usually easier, but of course their skill is a little lower. So it is your judgment as the instructor, right? If you notice that your students are kind of struggling, feel free to pause, right? Feel free to pause. Feel free to be like, like, let's say they say like burdensome approach to learning. You can pause and be like, okay, we just heard our first main idea. So now let's get ready to listen and write down the answer for this WH question, right?
Yeah.
If you keep playing it and students are confused, feel free to, of course, play it again for them. You just want to make sure that you're having progression throughout the term. So maybe at the beginning of the term, like weeks 1 to 4, maybe you'll listen to it. You'll pause before the main idea, and you'll listen to it 2 times. But then maybe in the middle of the term, you'll stop pausing at the main ideas, but you will still listen to it 2 times. And at the end of the term, by then, they should be able to only listen to it once and be able to answer. So you want to have progression throughout the term to showcase their improvement or to have them improve as well. Okay. All right. Anything else? Listening? Okay. Oh, and again, similar to the reading, right? We'll just use Tara for this one. The listening also has WH questions. So reading and listening, both WH questions for anything bridge and lower. Okay. All right. The last part, this shouldn't take too long. And we'll have about five minutes for any general questions. Again, this is only par birdie perspective, review, or reflect. And so basically, after they do the 2 perspectives, they can now reflect. And basically, it's, did their opinion about this topic stay the same or did it change? Right? And so one thing here that is useful is actually if you write down like who picked which side, so you know like which students stayed the same opinion and which students changed their opinion. And again, this is where you just kind of call on students, right? Taeyoon, why is your opinion the same? Or Mike, why did you change your opinion? And then have them explain their answer, right? Okay, and then project. Week 1 or lesson 1 projects for Terra Bridge Par Birdie are small projects, right? Again, you probably have a lot of free reign at your location to maybe change the projects, or maybe you have to do the project in the book. You just have to ask your HI or FM or whatever. But basically, one thing you just have to make sure with projects is projects are not, you have 40 minutes to do this, go. Right? You need to make sure these are students, they have low attention spans or lower attention spans. You need to break things down into steps, right? So it'll be like, step 1, you have 5 minutes to discuss with your group your parents' parenting style. right? Step 2, on this chart, you have 5 minutes. Put each member's parents on this chart, right? And then maybe it'll be like, okay, my mom is here and my dad is here, right? And then who else is in my team? Delphine's mom is here and Delphine's dad is here, right? And so you kind of work together. And then basically you follow the steps. You give each group a time limit for each step so that they're focused and they know exactly what they need to do. And then they will present, right? They will talk about it, they'll present. Explore, I'll be honest, I've not heard of a location that actually does this, but if your location does, this is homework usually. And this explore page is basically homework in preparation for next week's big project. The big project is usually at least an hour of class. Sometimes your location will allow you to spend a little more time on the big project. And so explore is basically working on like getting ideas for that big project. And so very quick, let me go through lesson 2 because it's almost all of it's going to be review almost. Share. This share page is essentially a summary of the previous week's reading and listening. All right, and so you can just elicit answers. You can discuss like, all right, you can be like, Amber, what do you remember from last week about tiger parenting being good for children? James, what do you remember from last week? Tiger parenting is harmful for children. It's really just a review from last week. So you just want to elicit answers from students. All right, nothing difficult on this part. It's just, again, recall and review. Then we have the other review page, which, if I remember right, it was always reading. So review page and lesson 2s are always reading, and it has both perspectives. It'll have both perspectives in one reading. And essentially, you just do this the same as the lesson 1 reading. WH questions, answers, discuss. So this is all done the same as the lesson 1 reading passage. Okay, really nothing difficult here. And then the big project. Okay. One thing that is very important for when your head instructor or your FM are looking at CCTV scores is how do you follow the process of the project? Again, if you just tell your kids, right, okay, let's just say here, right, let's say Seokjun and Sony and Joshua are one group, right, and you tell them, okay, you are group A, tell me, what's a parent going to be like now and 20 years later for group A? 50 minutes, go, right? Students will spend 45 minutes of that looking at pictures on Google Images and then 5 minutes typing, right? So you have to make sure you break things down into steps, right? In this case, right, we have step 1, right? Have them answer questions, have them explain or work together and write things down, right? You want to, of course, introduce the project first, right? Maybe talk about here's what we're going to do. Here's our end goal. What is the goal of this project? And then, of course, some projects might be more akin to team projects. Some might be more suited for individual. And again, your location might allow you a little bit of leeway to modify the project a little bit. All right, that's just up to your location. So introduce the project, get them kind of excited of what they're going to create. And then we want to go into the ideate section. Ideate section is all about brainstorming, essentially, right? Thinking of ideas, thinking of problems, thinking of solutions. And so, again, just follow the steps, or if you're able to modify the project, make sure you have your own steps for the students to follow. All right. Give them clear time limits of how long they have to do each step. And then after they've done all the brainstorming, they've done all their idea gathering, materialize is the actual construction, making the project. All right. And so maybe you have Google Slides. Maybe you're making a skit. Maybe you're making a poster, right? Materialize is the actual process of making the project. And so again, depending on the style of project you want, the length of time you give them for materialize will vary. Okay. I would say for higher levels, right, par birdie, you want to stay away from poster projects. You want to do more interactive projects. So presentations, skits, PPTs are better than posters, I feel like, because posters lean too heavily into drawing rather than writing. But again, your location may have more specifics that they would want you to do. One thing that you want to make sure you use are these expressions. So the bolded expressions are things that you want to have your students to include something similar into their scripts when they present. Because again, these are all key ideas from the lesson. The students should be using these key ideas in their presentations, in their projects. So students should have similar or the exact same phrases into their project. All right, and then again, we have the other part, right? Evaluate. Evaluate is after everyone's presented, right? We can think of this as almost feedback and overall lesson review, right? So like, which presentation maybe showcased the idea better? Which presentation, right? Which presentation best matched our current lifestyle, things like that. But you want to kind of have a wrap-up discussion almost of the lesson. Okay. And then you repeat this for every single unit. Again, very quick, because I know we have like 2 minutes before you have the next one. EC4 Mega Giga. Because you're doing a new lesson each week, you're probably not going to have time for a big project, but each week you'll just do smaller projects instead. And that's really the only difference. Okay. Any final questions then for C2 low mid? Any final questions, final ideas?
Sorry, Ray, if you mentioned this already, but
Yeah.
is there some flexibility with the project? Because I know obviously for A2 and V1, we if we don't feel like the project is appropriate for the class, we can change it slightly as long as we're staying on track. Is it a lot more prescriptive for this level, or can we change it slightly if we think they could do something else at the end?
So again, that's mainly based on your location, right? So in your case, Laura, I think you'll have to ask Anna, right? We'll have to ask Anna or Kyle. What do they want, right? Do you have a little bit of flexibility, right? Are you allowed to modify the project as long as it stays under the theme of Tiger Moms or Tiger Parenting? So that one is really all location dependent. Okay. All right, then if there's no other big questions, there are 2 links in the chat that I will need you to very quickly fill out. There is the survey. So basically the survey is just like, was this helpful? Did you get any extra information? Blah, blah, blah. And then there is the post-test, because I know you did have to take the pre-test to join. So there's the post-test, right? Make sure you do both. And then I know some of you, it is exactly 12. So some of you do need to go to the C1 low mid meeting. So if you do need to go to C1, you're free to go. If you don't need to go to C1, you can stay. And if you do have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll just end it. And then maybe I'll see some of you for C2D. Right? So yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
Excuse me,
good.
Ray, are you
Okay.
able to send those links on an email? Because I've just got to jump to the C1.
Yeah, I think that should be possible. So
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks, Ray.
yeah, no problem. That's fine. That's fine. Right. If you're still here, no questions? Any questions? If not, I will just end this. Okay, I think we're good then.